The micro apps are the three prototypes that were developed by Mari Lesterberg during the spring 2021. The prototypes can be reached in the browser and is meant to work cross-platform and on most smartphones and tablets. The main concept behind the apps are inspired by the swarm instruments. In the swarms project, people had sensors placed on their head, and while they were trying to stand still, inverted micro movement was used to control the gain of the sound. The idea is to bring some of the elements and concepts from the Swarms project into an app that can be used and reached by anyone. Common for all of the three prototypes is that the accelerometer data is used to track movement of the device and control different parameters of the sound. The intuitive and most usual way of thinking about mapping of energy is to think that the more force you put into an action, the higher the volume, the faster the speed, the higher the pitch, and so on. In the micro apps, we challenge this way of thinking. The more you move the app, the lower the gain will be. However, we also included an inverse button that allows you to go back to more common intuitive mapping and switch between those two different approaches. The pink dot inside the microwave oven monitors the motion by tracking the movement of the phone. In this app, which is the first prototype, movement on the y-axis decides the pitch, while the x-axis movement is mapped to different effect parameters. There is a button for turning the synth on, change to a different instrument and turn it off. When the inverse function is on, I have to try to hold the phone as still as possible to get any sound. If I accelerate the motion, the volume goes down. This is the inverted mapping that will be turned on by default. I can turn off this function, and now there is an opposite effect. There is also a button to switch between scales. The effects can be turned on and off with buttons on the right side. The first effect is a ping pong delay, the second effect is a wah-wah effect, and the third one is a phaser. The second app creates a random loop when the page is loaded. When press the start button is activated, a random loop of notes starts to play right away. By tilting the phone, you can activate and deactivate in different instruments, as well as control several effects. In this version, the speed of movement is mapped to the tempo of the loop instead of the volume. The volume remains the same, but the more force you put into your movement, the slower is the pace of the loop. The third app is very different. Instead of controlling a synth, there is a pre-recorded soundtracks with segregated instruments tracks that keeps looping. You activate and deactivate different instruments in the loop on the y-axis and switch between different variations of the loop on the x-axis. At the same time, you can activate and deactivate several effects on the menu of the right. The motion acceleration to volume mapping principle is the same as in the first app. The apps are written in JavaScript, CSS and HTML. The Tone.js library is used to make the sound engine. All of the code is documented in the wiki at the GitHub repository of the project.